Hey guys, welcome back to Surroguide. I'm Veronica,
I'm Travis.
and today we're finally going over contracts and how that process went. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the contract process and how that went for Veronica and I. And to start off, I can just kind of say that while a little nerve-wracking leading up to the actual contract process, the process itself wasn't that bad. The attorneys made it really easy and everything for us, but we do have a few tips to provide to make sure that you come out of this feeling comfortable with the contract and feeling like it properly advocates for you and is not just very one-sided.
Absolutely, yeah. Because how our situation went was our agency drafts up a draft of the contract, which states who we are and everything that they need, all the information they need to provide on their end. And then the intended parents, their attorney received it. They went over it, and then after they made whatever revisions or add-ons that they wanted to do, then they sent it over to us, and we reviewed it and made whatever changes we wanted to make. And then I think after that, things were good. You know, they agreed to whatever necessary changes we made to their revisions, and we were fine to move forward from there.
Yeah, the agency had a pretty generic contract that just has
They
a
give
lot
all
of
their
the
surrogates.
yeah, a lot of the legalities of just being a surrogate in California where we are, and just some other basic things like that. So when you receive it, it's not going to be specific to you in the sense of any particular circumstances that you could think of that you might want to incorporate into that contract.
The specifics that will be added is your specific compensation. So since we are in California, California surrogates get a slightly higher compensation. So in that instance, they would change that, and then they'd also incorporate anything as far as like if you requested a doula, they'd add that, and then any other that suits your specific case. So that's already in that contract, and that obviously can't be changed.
And that might vary from agency to agency. That's just kind of how our agency did it. Some attorneys might have their own version of the contract that they prefer to use. It just may be a little dynamic in that aspect.
Just depends.
But one of the big things that we wanted to make sure that we kind of pushed through in this video is to advocate for yourself. You want to make sure that, or I can say that while your attorney is there to be your advocate, they're not going to think of every scenario in which might concern you. If there are certain things that you are opposed to or you are not opposed to, it's very important to communicate those with your attorney and to let her know any concerns you have ahead of time. During the drafting process is when everything is going to go in. When after our intended parents have reviewed it and sent it over to us, that was our opportunity to look through it and find any areas that may not benefit us in the best way, or the way that we felt was we were most comfortable with.
Or even just to kind of protect you, because you never know what can happen, and you want to be protected in every way, medically and legally.
Yeah, you want to make sure, another big thing was the language in the contract. You want to make sure it's very clear, very plain language. Contract language can sometimes be very just hard to understand, to say the least. So it's okay to put very plain, very understandable words into that contract to make sure both parties really understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's really important that you can understand what you are signing up for. When you sign the line, you're agreeing to carry out your your
You're agreeing to do a job, basically,
your
and
agreement for this contract. And
you're-
so anything that this contract states that you're agreeing to do, you need to do it.
you're bound
so
by
you
law.
Need,
Yeah.
so you need to be okay with it, you know, and then also you need to be able to understand it, because some contracts, they do use a lot of legal
A lot of legal jargon.
and it's you know, it's hard to know whether it means this or this. And so you can ask your attorney, hey, can we specify this to mean this, because this is how I'm interpreting it, and they have no issue doing that.
Yeah, you know, at the end of the day, if anything does go to court, it's going to be the courts and the jury to decide what the language of the contract meant and what exactly is meant by the wording. So it's in your best interest to make sure it's as clear and understandable as possible as to what exactly you're trying to convey in that. Leading up to the contract, it is a good idea to get an eye on other contracts, maybe look at some other videos. You're here, so I'm assuming that you're kind of already in that process. But just to kind of get an idea of some things that people have put in their contracts. Again, we can't really go into specifics right now because we're still
We can't give specifics about our contract. However, it is good to watch videos of how other surrogates wish they would have done things differently when doing their contracts. There's a couple surrogates that I saw online who, in their contract, they put to have at least 1 hour of bonding with the baby, and this is just the surrogate and the baby, just to kind of say their goodbyes, since you do carry them for 9 months. And I feel like I wouldn't want to put that, because I just want our intended parents to spend as much time with their baby and get to do as much bonding in the beginning. I'm not opposed to meeting the baby, obviously, but that's important to another surrogate, but it's not important to me. So, but it may be important to you. So it's definitely something to kind of consider. And then we mentioned the language, how it's important for you to be able to understand the wording. And then
another aspect is to think about your health and your safety, basically. You want to make sure that the contract, you're not going to be bound by law to do anything that may put your health at risk. Or an extension to that, your family's health at risk. There was a section of our contract that had kind of included our family as well, some of our close intermediate family, and we weren't necessarily comfortable with those, and we didn't really feel like it was very necessary. So in that aspect, we chose to omit the rest of our immediate family, as they not really have much to do with this process, and just kind of focus more on us. But you know, always thinking about your health, your family's health, and making that number one priority is paramount, because you want to make sure you come out of this. The goal is to come out of this healthy and having done something wonderful for somebody, and you don't want to not be able to do this again next time if you want to, or end up with some kind of health conditions, or be blaming yourself because something happened to a family member. That,
absolutely,
you know.
Yeah. And when it comes to health, so say you've only had vaginal births like myself, I don't know if there will be an instance where I actually have a C-section, or if I have preeclampsia or anything along those lines. So it's important to have in the contract that your intended parents understand that they will be covering, you know, they will continue your health insurance as long as you need, as long as you, how do I say that?
Pregnant?
As long as you are pregnant, or at least up to a certain point postpartum. Because obviously some intended parents will probably only cover you up to 6 weeks or 2 or 3 months. And it depends. Like if you're pumping and you're you develop mastitis 6 months postpartum, but you're still pumping for them, like, do you still have the insurance to cover those costs? So it just depends.
Yeah, that's a good point. You want to think about things like that. So, sit down and go over some scenarios of what could happen. We've had wonderful pregnancies and very easy births in the past, but that's not to say something won't happen in the future. And we want to make sure that if something happens to Veronica while doing this process, that it's covered. We're not going to be liable for it. We're not in fault for it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Another important reason to read the contract is to protect yourself from legal action later. You want to know what you're allowed and not allowed to do.
Yeah, like travel. Travel is a big one. A lot of times they only let you travel a certain distance. So you're not able to take any cruises while you're pregnant. You're not able. Some intended parents don't want you to fly out of state once you're past a certain weeks gestation.
And yeah, there are certain rules that you just cannot get around. There's certain things in the contract that you have to do, and it's important to be aware of those and to protect yourself from later any legal action. You'd hate to get most of the way through this and then come back and find out you have to give all of the money that you've gotten back because of something you did that was against the contract. So it's very important to know what's in there, protect yourself from that legal action.
Absolutely.
That's pretty much all the topics that I had to touch on.
I think so. I think we mainly talked about, Oh, another thing I wanted to add is to ensure that you won't be paying anything out of pocket. So, or at least being aware of what you might have to pay out of pocket, because for the most part, the intended parents cover everything, all things medical expenses, co-pays, travel, childcare, etc. But,
So there are going to be certain areas in the contract that state that the parents are responsible for all medical expenses. But all medical expenses can be determined potentially in different ways. So it's okay to be a little bit more concise. If there's a specific scenario that you're worried about that you have in mind, add that in there. If there's any potential concerns, or just to make sure that anything that comes out of this pregnancy and this journey doesn't come back on us, basically.
Or if you have to deliver at a hospital that's considered out of network for your insurance, who's liable. And if, in the event that you were traveling and say it's not outside the bounds that they say you can travel, who's responsible, and obviously it'd be the intended parents, but it's important to have that in writing.
In case someone contests that or something like that. Yeah. But there's just been a few recommendations for us. I'm sure at the end of our journey, when our contract is null, basically, we may not still be able to go into specifics, but we can make a video of what we wish we may have done differently, and we might be able to reveal a little bit more information. So we'll kind of keep you posted on that as that develops, and we'll see how that goes.
Yep, we are moving along in our journey. That's why we haven't been able to put out that many videos due to the fact that this process, not a whole lot happens all at once. So we're just kind of putting them out a little here and there. But
what's our next video?
Our next video is the mock cycle. I'll be sharing how the mock cycle went and what
sneak peek, it went pretty good. It went good, so keep an eye out for that video regarding the mock cycle, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.